Yo, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the 157 show. My name is Jonathan, and normally sitting right over here across from me is my buddy Austin. But this past week, I tested positive for coronavirus, so we're having to do some quarantining. But we are still going to have him on the phone here with us, and he is still going to be a part of the show. He's just not going to be here with us physically. So that being said, I may go into a coughing fit. I'm going to try and mute myself so you guys don't hear that often. But hopefully we can get through this and continue to put out some stuff for you guys in the next coming weeks. As again, if you haven't had COVID, it can be pretty rough, with your talking and stuff like that, because you get to coughing and your throat hurts and everything else in between. So like I said, sitting here on the phone, we got Austin. Austin, they can hear you now, buddy. So.
All right, here we go. So, starting off, we had the intent to have our next episode, our first episode, discussing the SEC Media Day. But here we are sitting or Jonathan in quarantine and having to do an emergency show discussing the potential move of Oklahoma and Texas.
Oklahoma and Texas is the big story right now in college football, and especially the SEC as well. And that has some possibilities for Auburn and Alabama to make some changes as far as their division. I've seen rumors going around that Auburn and Alabama may end up being in the East, and just basically that's the only changes that you'll see as far as OG members of the SEC. Auburn, Alabama to the East, and then you'll have Texas and Oklahoma added in to the West. What do you think about that?
I think it's going to be an interesting change for the SEC. Dating back to Pat Dye, he was always, especially later years in life, he was an advocate for moving Auburn itself to the SEC, and with the addition of two teams, Texas and a possible addition of Texas and Oklahoma coming to the SEC, it only makes sense to move both Auburn and Alabama.
Just geographically wise, it makes sense, but at the same time, this is the same people that put Missouri in the East. I don't know what's the deal with that, but yeah, we're not going to talk about that right now. Texas and Oklahoma are two big, blue blood programs. That's what I'm going to call them anyway. They've been very historic in their college football history. Lots of national championships, lots of program pride, I guess is the right word. They're very proud of themselves. Let's go with that. And them coming to the SEC with a lot of big time heavyweights, that creates a big deal. Big super conference, 16 teams. And then, yeah.
Exactly. That was kind of one thing I was kind of wanting to lean on. I want to officially say that now, if this occurs, then the SEC will truly be the first super conference.
Oh,
yeah. It officially. But I'm going to have the homer opinion here, but I'm going to go ahead and say I think the SEC has been a super conference for years now. But with the addition of these blue bloods, as you're saying, it is a done deal. The SEC will be the first official.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and it's two historic programs coming into a conference that in the last just say 15 years alone had just historic numbers of championships and success in general with different teams.
Yeah, and you're going kind of back to the history of Oklahoma and Texas. Several championships and being blue buds, but let's kind of tailor this going towards the Big 12 and impact there. Oklahoma and Texas are founding members of the Big 12. So it's just an interesting concept to see that two founding members are trying to leave.
And one thing that's one thing that kind of blows my mind is we all know that they're going to be moving to the SEC for money. The SEC is top notch money wise when it comes to distributing to their schools. Is it worth the fighting for that top spot of the teams? Is the money worth the headache of knowing that you're not going to consistently win your conference?
Yeah. So previously, when I was kind of doing a little bit of quick research here, I was having trouble coming up with cons of this actual this move. So the first thing that I said in a cons list would be the stiffer competition for Oklahoma, which has been the winner of the Big 12 for the last 6 seasons. Texas, not so much. I don't think they've won it since 2009 when they had that championship versus Alabama. So it's going to be stiffer competition for Oklahoma. So you do have to do the pros and the cons in terms of, we win the conference every year, but if we're giving that up to earn more money, and they would definitely earn more money in the SEC.
Texas is the richest college football program, in the nation. I mean, easily. They have that
sure.
oil money that comes in, and it's crazy.
Well, and that's interesting for me with the Texas A&M argument, because I saw a quote today that says that they want to be the only Texas school that is represented in the SEC. And I don't really get that. You got the old money coming in. You're a great program yourself, so I don't understand why this is going to be such a big deal for Texas.
I think with Texas A&M being away from Texas for the last 10 years, I think is how long, 9-10 years, however how long they've been in the conference. They have kind of built up their own identity, so to speak. I think it's not going to be the same old push around, that kind of what Texas used to do, Texas A&M, kind of like a little brother thing. To me, Texas A&M is going to be a pretty solid, team year in and year out, I think. And, for what it's worth, I don't think that Texas is going to come in here and just be some big dog. I don't think the SEC powers that be are going to let them come in and try and run the show like they did over the Big 12. From everything that I've been reading and, stuff like that, that Texas has, with some of the stuff I've said, Texas has ruined two conferences already with the Southwest, the Big 12. Are they going to come over, and is the SEC going to let that happen? I don't think so. I don't see them coming in and letting them push them around at all. The SEC doesn't necessarily need Texas. It would like to have Texas, but they don't necessarily need them for money wise, and I don't think they're going to allow them to come in and just push them around and do whatever they want.
Yeah, no. So since we're kind of talking about things that are occurring and how Texas can come in and do certain things, do you want to kind of discuss, the pros of something?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
And Oklahoma moving over. All right. So, like we said earlier, with this, the two powerhouses joining the SEC, it'll be the first official super conference. I've already elaborated on that. But something to consider too is the visiting teams when we go to Texas and go to Oklahoma. We're going to have the increased amount of recruiting or the potential recruiting due to the frequency of the visits out that way.
Hey, go ahead. No, go ahead. Finish what you said.
So, yeah, just another one was going to be kind of the Red River Classic will come to the SEC. So we have the Iron Bowl, which I personally, once again, the homer opinion, is going to be the best rivalry in the nation. But you have this outstanding one here that's going to be coming as well. So now we have two of the best.
Yeah, easily. I mean, and the Red River Rivalry, that's a mouthful to say. Red River Rivalry. Last couple years, it hasn't necessarily been what it used to be, I guess. When Mac Brown was there, it was kind of back and forth with Bob Stoops and Mac Brown at Texas. But it's still a pretty decent rivalry. Ugh, I can't even talk.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and elaborate on that too. So in my notes, I kept putting Red River Rivalry, but eventually I just changed it to Red River Classic because I was actually having issues with that tongue twister.
That's a mouthful to say, seriously. So, all right, let me get into this and see what you think about this. What do you think with these two teams coming in? What do you think? How does this affect Alabama and Auburn? What do you think off the top of your head? How do you think this initially affects them in just say the first 2-3 seasons? And because let me tell you this, one thing that comes to my mind straight off the top, Alabama just came out, and it was a couple months ago, I believe, or it may have been, was a couple months ago. It may have been a year ago or so. Anyway, they actually had a home and home series with Texas.
Yeah, and I've seen that in my research too, where Georgia, I believe, has a home and home series with Texas over the next few years too. So that will cause some scheduling conflicts.
Yeah,
but
I mean, that of course they're going to have to go out and find another team, to to play for out of conference, or they may just let it be and just ride it out. Who knows? Just don't count that as an SEC game, if that makes sense. I feel like there was somebody that did that not long ago, and I can't remember off the top of my head who it was. But I mean, that to me, that's one thing straight off the top, and then another thing to me is going over into the East with Georgia, Florida. Those two teams right there are stronger, I think, than what we have in the West currently. I don't think. I mean, Texas A&M is good, but I don't think Texas A&M is Georgia good. I don't think. Who would be next? Ole Miss or LSU. Let's say LSU.
Yeah, please don't say Ole Miss. They had like the
Defense wise,
second
they were
worst
terrible.
defense.
Now, I'm not gonna lie. The game
last
year between Alabama and Auburn, that was the most nail biting thing I've ever seen in my life. That was terrible for me. At least until the last 3-4 minutes. I was, but no. LSU, I think is right now they're not the team that they used to be. Of course, with Burrow, they lost a bunch of stuff with Burrow when he left, but. Yeah, coordinators and everything else. But LSU's kind of gone downhill, and then they have all this other stuff going on with these sexual harassment, Title IX stuff. To me, though, I think Georgia and Florida are another tier than what's happening in the West right now. I don't.
So think about it this way: you're talking about the SEC West kind of being the current the dominating conference, just with Alabama alone. But if you move Alabama and Auburn to the East. So then now your East consists of Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Georgia. 4 big, strong programs. I'll be the first one to say Auburn probably being the weakest of the 4. But your SEC West dominance is, in my opinion, going to be shifted to the SEC East. So I believe now it'll be the SEC East. Is
now with Oklahoma being in the West, I think that's going to be the team to beat in the West, though. Like straight from
sure.
year one, Oklahoma's going to be the team to beat in the West. If Alabama and Auburn move to the East.
Well, I mean, with A&M kind of stepping up, and they're predicted to do well in the West this year with Jimbo and how he's recruiting out there. I think that it'll be a good. I think the West will do well with Oklahoma and A&M standing alone in essence, because I think Texas is going to have some additional rebuilding. But going back to what you said about Auburn, Alabama, and how it may affect them, I think I'm a big believer in competition breeds competition. So the better teams that you're surrounded by or you're facing year in and year out, I think the SEC will grow in talent and the level of competition itself will increase just by default. Kind of going back to the original statements, you got 2 powerhouses joining the SEC. You got increased recruiting potential going to the Midwest. You have the Red River Classic coming to the SEC. There's just so many.
It's going to be a major game changer. It's going to be a very major game changer, and I think one thing that's going to suck is for the other teams that are in the Big 12, the Oklahoma States, the TCU, Baylor, K-State. Some of those are going to be kind of left out in the dark, and they're from what I saw, there's talks of. One of 3 things are going to happen. Either the Big 12 is going to add members, some of the smaller schools such as just Memphis, UCF, Houston, schools like that, or you're going to have a Pac-12 and a Big 12 merger. I don't know how in the world that's going to work out, because you're going to have teams possibly across 4 time zones. I mean, you got West Virginia over here all the way on the Eastern time zone. So I don't know. I don't know how well that would work out.
Yeah. So that kind of gets into a larger thing that I'll be honest, I haven't done the research for. But if you kind of get into the merger of what's left of the Big 12, kind of going to the Pac-12, then you're going to have teams like, I think, just off the cuff here, West Virginia will have to kind of go to the Big 10. Iowa State going to the Big 10. So then you have TCU going to the Pac-12. You have Texas Tech going to the Pac-12. So you're going to have to kind of figure out how to divvy these teams up. And that's when college football will take that next step, if this occurs. It'll take that next step to a 4 a Power Four
Right.
conferences where
Now
you have
let
four
me
majors.
just we're gonna shift back over to the SEC again real quick because I just this popped in my head for just a minute. What? Okay, the talks and already playoff expansion. I To me, I think this is going to help the SEC's case of getting multiple teams in. 16 teams. How are you going to leave? Uh, some of these teams out of a playoff. I mean,
You're going to have three guaranteed teams going in. I can go ahead and say once the expansion occurs, it's going to be Oklahoma, Alabama, and Georgia year in and year out. And then, and this is me. Let's just completely not talk about the Oklahoma and Texas expansion with this next point. But I think Auburn was going to be a benefit of the expansion of the playoffs every year anyway. I think that they can slip in as one of those bottom
yeah,
seeds year in and year out because they have those great runs towards the end of the season. I think that
yeah,
could have occurred anyway. But with adding the level of competition, adding bigger teams, and having these bigger games, I think that'll benefit Auburn because they're not going to be guaranteed the slot like Oklahoma
yeah,
and
yeah. To
Alabama.
me,
And I left out Texas A&M with all that too, so I think that they can kind of benefit from
yeah.
the
Now,
expansion.
Okay, I've asked you your thought. What do you like? How do you honestly feel about it? Do you think this is a good thing for college football? Do you think it's a bad thing for the SEC? How are you looking at this?
I mean, it's more money, more talent, and I get a chance to we get a chance to put Oklahoma and Texas to shame. I have no issues with this. I'm a big believer in survival of the fittest. So, like I say, competition breeds competition. Come play with
I
the
mean,
big
to
boys
me,
and
they've
see what
been talking
happens.
a bunch. Every time Oklahoma beats an SEC team, they always seem to talk a little junk. So now they get to do it year in and year out as an SEC member, and I think it's going to be to be great when all these SEC teams gain up on them and just shellac them, basically. Uh,
It's going to be a week
the
in
only
and
thing that
week
sucks is the
out
fact that
gauntlet
Bob Stoops
for them.
isn't there. I really just despise that guy. I really despise that guy. He's so cocky, and it bothers me so much.
We got Mark Stoops. We
Oh
got
well,
that's the
we'll
second
have to
best
deal with what
option,
we
I
can.
guess.
Um, I'm trying to think of the whole time we're sitting here talking. I'm trying to think of what could a negative thing be about this. I mean, eh,
Yeah, and the biggest negative that I have is going to be the Big 12 possibly
yeah,
being dismantled. So, other than that, besides the point I elaborated on earlier where I talked about stiffer competition for Oklahoma, I really don't see any cons. And it's nothing but pros for me. And we've already talked about those points. I don't want to reiterate on that, but I can't think of any additional cons.
if you were the Big 12 commissioner and you had to go after two teams to replace Texas and Oklahoma, who would your first two be?
Oof, that's a question. Let's go with off the top of my head here. Um, I'm gonna go with
You
Utah
Utah in the pack. Okay,
and Central
going
Florida.
complete opposite directions. Oh, and
Yeah, so I mean, I mean, okay, so if I didn't do Utah, let's put a second would be
Boise. Okay,
Boise and
yeah.
BYU.
I
Let's do
that
those are
that
my
was going to be one
four.
of my picks was Boise, and probably
Yeah,
Memphis for me. To me, Memphis has been pretty solid the last couple of years, and then Boise, of course, for the last however many years has been just beating the crap out of everybody up there in the mountains. But I think it's. I mean, it's going to take some work for them if they want to keep that conference alive. I don't think the Big 12 can make it without uh, Texas and Oklahoma because some of these other schools, man, they rely on some of this money that comes in from the conference. You know what I mean? Like that gets passed around.
yeah, and I was seeing something earlier about that where I'm just going to assume that both Texas and Oklahoma are both top 20 in terms of revenue. Uh, the next highest earning team within the Big 12 is going to be Kansas. And I think they may be top 30 just based off a quick Google search there. So that's going to be interesting to see how that'll be distributed.
The
But ultimately, I think it'll be a disappointment.
Yeah, I mean, to me, like, I don't know it. One of the only ways you can possibly save it is if you've got to get some big names in there, and I don't know if you could work it out, but if you could, I would go after Notre Dame and get them in your conference. To me, that would go after them.
See,
That what other name in college football history would? I mean, it's so recognizable. You know, Notre Dame is just such a recognizable name, and then I'd get them, and then after last season, Nebraska just absolutely hates the Big Ten. It seems like I'd go back after Nebraska because they was in the Big 12 at one time.
oh, for sure. So yeah, like, oh man, now that you mentioned that, yeah, like, yeah,
I
let's try to do
mean,
Nebraska. Yeah, that's a great point.
Nebraska, I think would after last season's debacle with COVID and everything else, I think that they would be all in on coming back to the Big 12, especially with Texas and Oklahoma gone. Your competition's gone, easy wins. I mean,
Oh yeah, like you have the chance to be the top dog again, which is what we've been saying, or what the media has been saying for years now. Is Nebraska's coming back, or Nebraska
yeah.
has a chance to come back, and this would truly be their chance to come back if that were to occur. So I'm glad you brought on Nebraska.
I mean, I don't think that you're still not going to get the same amount of money that Oklahoma and Texas bring to the table, but it would be less. It would be what. It'd be less of a hit, more manageable, I guess. I don't know. I mean, it's going to get interesting over the last couple or the next couple weeks or so with all this going on. All this has gone completely fast, though. I mean, the last 48 hours, this has just gone just like that. I mean,
yeah. And to mention the 48 hours, so several sources are saying that the final announcement should be announced within the next 24 to 48 hours, and that the SEC could make the announcement that they are going to add Oklahoma and Texas within a few weeks. And all they need
which means
is
that they
11,
will be playing in the 2022 season, which is not this season, but next season, of course. That's crazy.
Right. So it's one of those things you only need 11 teams by my math, and a quick check. There's 11 to 14, and the only SEC team that's been adamant against it.
Now let me look. I've seen that same thing with that one Texas A&M saying no. Do you think they're saying no behind the scenes to more money, or do you think they're saying no just up front, just to kind of like, all right, we hate Texas, we don't want them in here, but back on the backside they're like, hey, I want that money, let them in. I mean, why would you say no to more money? I mean, come on. I don't know. Is your hate for that school that bad that you don't want more money, that you don't want them in the same conference? I mean, to me, like we talked about, this is a win-win for everyone, I think, other than Texas A&M kind of gets screwed a little bit as far as recruiting goes. But welcome to the SEC, buddy. I mean, this is now you're really seeing what the SEC is about. Alabama has to recruit against Auburn and multiple other D1 schools. Kentucky doesn't have a. You got Kentucky and Louisville, but Louisville's in the ACC. Tennessee, Mississippi. These schools compete against each other on the recruiting trail all the time. So, I mean, it's just part of it.
What makes you special in this sense? Like, you get to have your identity as the only Texas school in the SEC, but you should make your identity through going out there and winning and showing who you are. Wins speak for themselves. Like, if you're going to win, you're going to be recognized. So I think it's a very poor argument, especially coming from a school from Texas, which we all know has.
I mean, if you can afford to pay your coach $70 million guaranteed, come on now. They're paying Jimbo a 10-year contract, $70 million guaranteed. Come on, man. I know you can afford to do some recruiting, some serious recruiting, and you shouldn't have to worry about it. But
yeah, and so that kind of goes on to the what is next part of everything. So right now, we're expecting an announcement in some capacity within the next 2 days, and maybe an official announcement from the ACC within a few weeks. But also, both teams, Oklahoma and Texas, have grant of rights agreement through 2025 But the buyout, as you and I have discussed, is a drop in the bucket to the earning
Yeah.
potential that they're going to have in the SEC.
You'll make that up
expect
easy
them,
within a couple years.
exactly.
I mean,
yeah, by 2025, you will have made up what you spent to buy out.
It's I think it come out to be $160 million almost between both schools. So, I mean, you'll make your money back. I mean, easily in the SEC, quick. I mean, in the time, if you was to wait it out, it's just worth it to go ahead and pay it and get out of there.
Yeah, you're losing money at that point.
I mean, it's just kind of crazy. I'll tell you this too. There was another proposal that I seen for the conference realignment. I guess how you would organize the teams. I don't know if you've seen this too, but there was a 4 pods. Have a north, south, east, and a west. And of course, I mean, this is all hypothetical, so you don't know which team would be where. But of course, you would keep Oklahoma and Texas. I would assume you'd have Texas A&M and then maybe Arkansas or Missouri in the same little pod. But what would happen is you play your three, your three in your pod, and then you would play 2 games from each other pod. So I mean, I think that's the most realistic model, other than just all right. Splitting it down the middle again and then having an east and a west. I like that model a lot better, the four pods model, because you will play the same team, or you will play the rotation again every 4 years is what I saw, or something like that. So you're not waiting as long to play the same team again.
Yeah, you wouldn't be playing. Auburn wouldn't be playing Florida once every decade.
Right.
So, but the real losers, and I don't want to get off topic here, but the real losers of the pod situation is going to be Arkansas and Missouri, based off the potential pods out. So it'll be Oklahoma, Texas, Arkansas, Missouri.
Yeah.
So who's to say that we don't lose Missouri back to the Big 12?
Right. And I've seen talk about Mizzou going back to like maybe either the Big 10 and then Texas A&M going as well. Of course, these are just rumors. These aren't of things that are happening.
Well, everything that we've talked about on this podcast so far has been
that
rumors,
is true. Well, that is true. It's official that they're leaving. I mean, that is true. Now, if they come to the SEC, we still don't know that. But if it does happen, this is, I mean, you're hearing it here first. Almost everything that we've talked about.
Everything that's came up has really just been announced today. I mean, some reports
hours
were kind
ago,
of sprinkling out there Wednesday, and then some hit Thursday. But the big boy reporting was happening on Friday. And it's just been all day back and forth, which kind of leads me to another point that I had wrote down, which would be I saw reports that this has been in the happenings or in the discussions for 6 months, and no one's heard about it. So that's
I've seen
amazing.
the same thing too.
I'm so amazed.
6 months, 6 months to a year is what I saw, and to me it's just crazy that it was kept quiet for this long, especially in this world of social media and leaks and everything else. It's crazy that it was able to stay under wraps for this long. And I don't know, from one thing that I saw too, that the Texas, I want to say is a chancellor or a president or something, Texas president and the Oklahoma president are actually really good friends. So they kind of like kept it hush hush with their people because they know the same people, around the same people. You know what I mean?
Birds of feather flock together.
Yeah, exactly. And then the less people that you tell, the more secure that you are. I mean, of course, I think everyone will know that. But
so, I mean, I know we've discussed a lot. Is there anything else that you want to touch base on? Like I said, we've kind of went over the history, what's happened, what we expect, and then we've also kind of discussed different things, potential things that may occur within the SEC.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I think that's about it as far as I'm off the top of my head. You have anything you want to add?
No, I think that this is going to be a great move for the SEC. I think it's going to change the entire landscape of college football. And I kind of hope Oklahoma comes in and gets the butt kicked.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I need Oklahoma to just consistently lose for the next decade and a half. I mean, they can't come in here and just dominate everyone. So, but guys, again, thank y'all for tuning in to this episode, man. We are having so much fun talking about this and discussing everything that's going on in college football and the SEC and everything like that. Appreciate you guys tuning in. I know I'm kind of coughing just a little bit there, but you guys don't forget to hit that subscribe button, the like button, and that notification bell. And also, we have a Twitter page. If y'all don't mind, go ahead and follow that. I'll make sure to put all that in the bio, below. And also, comment below what you guys think about what's happening over the SEC, man, with Texas and Oklahoma being added. I think it's a great move myself, and we'll just have to see what happens and how it plays out here in the next coming weeks. So, again, thank y'all for tuning in, and have a wonderful day.